families who are graduating from the class of 2014, 15 and 16, and my hearty congratulations to all those who have graduated. Understand your college is commemorating the 7th batch of graduation today, and I had a chance to go around your facility and I was extremely impressed with the facility there. And I think it's important to recognize the great yeoman service, the chairman and the vice chairman and the management of this institution who have been consistently uplifting to make this as a premier and a global institution. And as many of you know, institutions are not built just one day or 1 year or one decade. It takes many, many years to build institutions. But I think the chairman and the vice chairman and the entire team is working hard to blossom this university or institution into a world-class place. Firstly, it's a little bit nostalgic for me that I am sitting on the other side. I remember 32 years back I was sitting on the other side as a student and listening to a graduation day. I don't even remember what happened that day to me, but I can also fully understand what goes through in each of your minds today as business graduates. I think before I start my graduation day address, I would like to dedicate this address to all my teachers, my parents, several mentors who have played a significant role in actually nurturing me and making me responsible for what I am here today. I know as you all walk into a new world, I think you are getting into a world which is very different from the world that we were walking in 30 years ago. This morning I would like to leave you with a couple of things on three important topics. One is about which way this world is going. It's extremely important for you all to understand that. The second is I will also talk and share with you all some insights about what is happening on technology and the disruption that is happening to the businesses on technology. And then the third is I will leave you with some advices which should probably help you all as graduates in your own careers, as some of it has worked for me. So I thought it's a good idea to share with you and also help you all inspire. So these are the three things I plan to share with you all this morning. Firstly, let me talk about what is happening in the whole world. I think the whole world is right now in a bit of a chaotic situation, because if you look at in the 1980, some of you may have been born that time, but some of you may not have been born, that the walls around Russia broke down, the common European Union was formed, the East German, West German walls broke down, and there was a common European market that emerged. Russia started to get much more integrated to the European Union. America started trade with Europe. China started becoming more democratic in terms of doing trade. And I think somewhere in the late 1980s, the world saw the first journey of globalization. I think this globalization, which started in 1988-89, has in my view stopped in 2008. Why I say that is, I will come back to that in a moment. Now what happened between 1990 and 2008? Because of globalization, the borders broke down. The World Trade Organization allowed countries to transfer products. Countries not only transferred products, but also migration started. Migrations like Indians moving from India to USA, Indians moving from India to rest of the world, Chinese moving from China to rest of the world. So the world benefited the last 30-40 years on globalization. The world trade grew from something like $35 million. And I think in 2008 or just 2007, we close to touch about $70 trillion. Now, $70 trillion of world trade, we haven't seen even now. The last time we saw $70 trillion of world trade was in 2007-8. Now, something happened in 2007 and 8, which not many of us are able to read. But some of the symptoms of what happened in 2007 and 8 is kind of unfolding in the form of Brexit, in the form of Trump being elected as the American president. And you can clearly see the globalization has stopped and populism is gaining momentum. Every country wants to protect its boundaries. Every country wants to go back to nationalism. Even our own Prime Minister is talking about Make in India. So there are a lot of implications for us as citizens of this world. Now what happened in 2007 and 8? I think a couple of things happened in 2007 and 8. All the political leaders, they used to be either in the Davos Summit or in the World Economic Forum. The World Trade Organization over systematically reduced the barriers between countries to do business. The migration of people, not just from India, I think all over the world people were migrating to another country where economically the country was better. But all of it stopped in 2007 and 8 for two reasons. I think globalization led to, one, a lot of loss of jobs in matured economies. If you go into a country like the US, down into a very small city which is like a Detroit, it used to be the capital of car manufacturing. All the blue collars in Detroit have lost their jobs in the last 20 years. Now those were the blue collars who actually have voted for Trump. Now it's important for you to connect this because the geopolitical situation in this world today is highly unpredictable. I'm sure all of you have been watching what's happening in North Korea. All of you have been watching what has happened to the Britain as a country, that they want to decouple themselves from Europe. France was very lucky to go to elect the Prime Minister who was in favor of globalization, whereas Madame Le Pen, she was a right extreme populist candidate. Of course, in India we have a right-wing democratic party ruling. But I think if you see, look at the world over, most of the political leaders are kind of talking and voicing languages which actually is concerning about globalization. So, the point I want to leave with you all is, migration of people also leads to fundamental rights being diluted in another country. So suddenly you go from a country like India or China and take over a job in US, whereas the blue collars are losing jobs in US. So there is a kind of a dilemma there that goes on actually. That was one of the reasons why you see a lot of coming back of populism in some countries, and that's also more or less the case in Brexit and more or less the case in France. Now we don't know which way the geopolitical thing will evolve over the next 15-20 years, but I think as graduates who are graduating from your own disciplines, you must be very aware that the world is not the same as it was in 2007 or 8. Another important thing happened in 2007 or 8, which made the populist politicians get much stronger than the globalized politicians. And that was the global financial crisis, where close to 7 or 8 large financial companies in the US went bankrupt. So people's belief in globalization was taking a big shock. And since 2007 and 8, there is a general trend of slowing down of globalization. But I wouldn't say that we are moving more towards populism or we are moving more towards globalization. What will decide in the next 10 to 15 years is which way the world moves based on the geopolitical challenges that we see in the world. The bigger challenge for countries like us is we are extremely integrated into the whole world, and it is very difficult for us to decouple and come out of the whole world to build ourselves as an independent nation. The world is highly integrated today. So I think how we play our foreign policy is extremely important. And noticeably, we are lucky to have a Prime Minister, because if you look at the first 14 months he took over as Prime Minister of India, he recognized that we need to get the geopolitical dimension right for India, and he literally was visiting every country to make sure that we rebuild very strong relationship from a political and an economic point of view from many of the countries. Even though there is a lot of jokes about Prime Minister visiting very frequently abroad, is one side of it, but I think the real side of it is the world is moving towards populism from globalization. But I think the Prime Minister is putting his efforts to see how India can play a very leading role in the world economy. Now, the reason why I'm standing in front of you and talking about globalization and populism is it means a lot for us, because we are walking into a world where we think everything is available for us, but in reality everything is not going to be available for us. Everything has to be created by us. And that's exactly why I wanted you all to be aware of that the world is moving far away from globalization. And in the last 5 years, the global trade has come down dramatically from the $70 trillion to about $65 trillion. And it has not yet reversed to go back to $70 trillion. There is another big change that is happening in the world, is you clearly see more and more services being transacted across the borders than products being transacted across the borders. And that's also why the whole economy, the economies of the world are changing dramatically. And the reason for that is my second topic that I'm going to share with you all. It's on technology. Now, if you go back to 200, 300 years back, when Benjamin Franklin, one of the scientists from the US, he was sent as an ambassador to France. And it was a very nice thing, because France was just out of its World War, and an American scientist going as an ambassador to France was conceived as a very good strategy by the Americans. Also, the French respected Benjamin Franklin because he was not only a reputed scientist, but I think a couple of things happened there. I think Benjamin Franklin, when he was in France, the hydrogen balloon was invented. Now, when the hydrogen balloon was invented, people thought, 200 years back, people haven't seen a balloon. So people thought there is some big disruption happening in this world, and suddenly a hydrogen balloon is able to lift people. But technology is always like that. It actually, when it is born, it disrupts everybody around us. And the reason is because we have to start looking at technology as an enabler for our lives. We always see technology as something that is really harmful for us. Now, why is technology impacting us dramatically? I think over the last 30 years, the cost of electronics is coming down 30% every 3 years. Mankind is being challenged by computers like IBM Watson. And IBM Watson has actually beaten a human being in a couple of games, which was even televised in the American televisions. We are now developing robots to replace human beings. So the reason why we see technology taking over human beings is a couple of reasons. It's only the humans who invent technology, but the same technology is becoming a problem for us. Now, if you look at technology, the last 10 years, 15 years, a lot of technologies have started to disrupt us. So let me talk about two examples where it will help you to understand. Now, earlier when a technology came in, it used to have a linear impact on human beings. Now, a technology does not have a linear impact, it has an exponential impact. What I mean by linear impact is like a balloon. A balloon was only used to experiment how to use hydrogen to lift it up. Thank you. But if you look at technology, like computers, artificial intelligence, robots, bio, nano, all of this, it is starting to impact multiple businesses. I'll give you two examples. Take Amazon as a company. Amazon was a startup, and the origin of Amazon was they wanted to replace and disrupt libraries. I had the chance to go to your library, and the beautiful library you have here with, you have an upper deck balcony and a downstairs as well, so it's a pretty nice library you have. But remember, Amazon was disrupting libraries. That's how they started. Now today, Amazon is shipping fruits and vegetables. So they are not only disrupted libraries, they have already disrupted supermarkets, shopping malls, and they are disrupting fruits and vegetable vendors. So that's what I call exponential technologies. Another example I can give you is a Japanese company which is only 20 years old. It's called the Rakuten Ichiba. Rakuten Ichiba was founded only in 1997 as an e-commerce company selling electronic products on the net. Today they sell insurance services. Today they sell finance. Today they sell electronics. They even have a website where you don't need to go to a shopping mall. Sitting in your house, it gives you the experience of a shopping mall. Many times we go to shopping mall for window shopping, but here actually you can still do the window shopping sitting in your house. And they give you the real virtual three-dimensional effect of a shopping mall. And consequently, Rakuten Ichiba has disrupted all the shopping malls in Japan, where 30% of the shopping malls are shutting down. Now it's just an internet company. So what you need to be aware of is we are living in a world where technology is becoming cheaper. I think when the first mobile phone came to India, nobody expected that using a mobile phone, which was actually invented in Finland. The mobile phone was actually invented in Finland, where it was used by the military to communicate during the war period using some technology. That's how mobile phone was started, and Nokia was the company which actually invented the mobile phone basically. Of course, later Motorola and others took over the technology. But I think what's happening is that with the dramatic scaling up of electronic volumes, the prices are coming down almost 30%. And also when you go and look at NASDAQ, the listed companies, you see companies are getting disrupted very fast. If you take the last 100 years, there are only 30 companies who have survived 100 years in NASDAQ, which means the rest of all the companies have vanished. So why this is happening? This is purely happening because of technology. Now remember what I said about globalization versus populism. Technology is also going to be a challenge for politicians. The populist right wing and the left wing are also going to be challenged by technology, because technology actually helps globalization more than it helps the populace. Because the price of the electronics is coming down, robots are replacing human beings. In fact, you have newer technologies like 3D printing. And a good example of a 3D printing is if you go to a dentist and he has to replace one of your teeth. It was a long process of about 3 months with a dentist in the past. Now with 3D printing, he can do it in 3 hours for you. So on one side it helps the mankind. The other powerful thing about technology is doctors are going to be redundant. In fact, 20 years from now, you can perform a surgery using artificial intelligence and IBM Watson and you don't need a doctor. Already there is a trial going on in China where Philips Healthcare is running an intensive care unit without any doctor. So they use the parameters of the patient and using the artificial intelligence, they manage everything from the computer. So which businesses are going to be challenged? Medical profession is going to be challenged. Hospitals are going to be challenged. Educational institutions are going to be challenged. Insurance companies are going to be challenged. Medical equipment manufacturers are going to be challenged. So that's the kind of disruption that is probably happening. And go back to the 200-year-old example of a hydrogen balloon. So like 200 years back, somebody was looking at a hydrogen balloon. We are now standing and looking at these kind of technologies. So in mankind, disruptions have always happened. I think what is important for us to embrace disruptions and live with those disruptions. The third thing that I wanted to share with you all was we continue to live in a VUCA world where volatility, uncertainty, complexity and ambiguity is going to only increase. It's not going to really decrease. I think we are seeing in the world the rate and speed of change is ever increasing. I think what is important for us to recognize is the effectiveness of us as human beings. How do we respond to this when change is happening? And that is very, very important for students who are leaving this institution and going into the real world of life. Now, in my view, graduation is not the beginning, rather it's not the end, but the beginning of a new learning and change, in fact. What you have learned the last couple of years, you actually put it to great use. Now, based on my experiences, when I passed out from my engineering college, of course today even though I have studied engineering, I don't recall anything on engineering because I only look at two things. One is my top line and my bottom line, which is cash flow. Those are the two things I look at now. I hardly know anything about engineering right now. I would confess that I'm shameless to stand here and say I don't know engineering, but that's the reality of life, that over time you forget it. I think the first thing that you as graduates need to do is to really look at having a very strong dream. It worked for me. So when I passed out of engineering, I had a dream. My dream was either to own a company or lead a company. That was my dream. Of course, don't ask me why only own or why only work. I mean, it just happened to be a dream. But I think dreams are very powerful because they become a very strong internal motivators for you. But if you look back, if you don't have a dream, you don't have an internal motivation. And only if you have a dream, it will help you to kind of draw the footprints of what you want to do in your own careers. Because dream happens first in your mind. Then second, it comes in concrete form of how you want to execute. So it's extremely important for you to dream. I'm assuming all graduates are dreaming here, It's so important for you to dream. If you're not dreaming, you better go and start dreaming tonight, It's so important for you to shape your dreams in your careers. And as you grow up, that is where you start converting your actions, which is focused on the dreams, to realize your dreams. And it is also important for you to really learn from what you do every day towards the journey of fulfilling your dreams. It's so important. You need to first dream first. Second is you should put a plan to execute your dream and go after it. The second thing which is very important from what I told about globalization, populism, technology is when I passed out 30 years back or 32 years back, the world was much more calmer than today. So there is an important thing that I would prescribe for you all in this VUCA world where everything is very volatile, uncertain, complex and ambiguous, that you need to be very agile and adaptable. At this age, if you start bringing in agility and adaptability, it will allow you to experience far more complex situations in the world than your other colleagues. And those are the leaders who are real true leaders today in the Indian industry, because they have been able to be very agile and adaptable in their daily life. So I would urge you all not just to have a dream, but put a milestone to reach your dream. And second, you need to be agile and adaptable. I know, when I meet a lot of youngsters, in our days, there were no many jobs available in Chennai. We all had to migrate to another city in India to get a job. I had to go to Hyderabad or I had to go to Mumbai or Delhi to find another job actually. Today, Indian economy has grown, and I think we are now lucky to have an economy which is $2 to $3 trillion in size, that there are more jobs available where your parents are living. But I left my home in '79, leaving my parents all alone, and I went to a college and then I had to go and find my job. So I would urge you to really look at not having preferences for where you want to live, rather preferences for what you want to learn, and put yourself in complex situations that helps you to become more agile and more adaptable. The third thing that I wanted to leave with you all is, do not be afraid of admitting ignorance. The world is changing very fast, and you should be having the humility to say, I don't know something. And you also should know, if I don't know something, from whom can I learn something, that which I don't know. So there are two things that I would like to leave you all with is, one, you need to know whom to network, and networking is extremely important in this world. I am standing here today not because of my graduate degree, but I am here because of putting myself in complex situations and heavily networked. In fact, as I am sitting next to Mr. Ponuswamy, I didn't know him 3 years ago. But he's probably even 10 years elder than me, but I'm able to learn a lot from him. We share a lot of daily problems in business. We share a lot of knowledge, and our own knowledge is growing up. So I think you need to be demonstrating humility, and also you need to be very open-minded to learn. That's the third important thing actually. The fourth important thing that I would like to leave with you all is, always play to win. What I mean by that is, winning is not about making other person lose. It's basically about stretching yourself on your strong areas. The great thing about human mankind is, everybody is born with a strength and a weakness. There is no human being in the world which is only born with strengths. If I am standing and speaking in front of you, I have my pair of weaknesses. It's not that everything is strong in me. But I think what you need to look at as individuals is to challenge yourself on your strong areas and stretch yourself on your strong areas, because that is where you're strong, that is where your passion is, and that is where you can actually excel in your own careers. So, I think before I would like to conclude, I would like to remind you these three things. The world is complex, not as calm as when it was when I passed out. The world is getting disrupted. Business models are vanishing. Companies are vanishing. You are stepping into a world where technology is taking over. You need to prepare yourself. In order for you to be successful, it's important you have a dream, and dream big, because dreams are very strong motivators for you. It internalizes your thought processes to go after your dream and make steps to execute them. And when dreams fail, you learn from it. It's not that everybody will succeed every time, first time. In fact, when I first hit my 1,000 crore as a CEO, it was not from 0 to 1,000. I took over a business of 1,400 crores and I grew it to 2,800 crores. And I said, look, that was not what I exactly wanted to do. And I left the company overnight and joined a company which was 30 crores and grew it to 1,200 crores. So that was what was working in my mind. So it's important for you to really go back and think about that, And then of course, you need to be networked, you need to be humble, humility, and you need to shed ignorance. Always play to win, very, very important. So finally, as you commence all your careers today, or some of you have already begun, some of you might have a jump start, and some others may progress at a different pace. It's really okay, I have been having classmates who didn't get a job when I got a job, but actually they are well to do than I. So sometimes somebody gets it faster, somebody takes some time. So don't worry about it. What is important for you is to enjoy the success when you get that success. Because life is a journey. And it's not always at 800 kilometers per hour. It goes up and down. So whatever you do, you enjoy with passion. And chase your dreams. Don't chase money and don't chase titles. It's very important. Once you chase money, once you chase titles, you cannot meet your dreams. So if you chase your dreams, success will be yours. And finally, I would like to leave with one words from Swami Vivekananda. You are all the creator of your own destiny. Thank you very much.